So, good morning everyone. The next part of our discussion is all about Roman and Greek codes, which is letter C, the Greek code of Draco. Uh, this Greek code of Draco evolved in Greece, which is called as the Code of Draco, and it is a harsh code that provides the same punishment for both citizens and the slaves as it incorporates primitive concepts. Example is the vengeance, blood feuds. The Greeks were the first society to allow any citizen to prosecute the offender in the same of the injured party. So, kapag napatunayan na ang isang tao ay nakagawa ng krimen sa kapwa niya, so doon na siyang magbibigay ng hatol sa taong nagkasala sa kanya, which is in the concept of vengeance and blood feuds. The Burgundian Code 500 Anno Domini specified punishment according to the social class of offenders, dividing them into nobles, middle class, and lower class, and specifying the value of the life of each person according to social status. So dito naman sa Burgundian Code, so kapag halimbawa na ikaw ay slave, wala kang salat ka sa yaman, wala kang pagmamayari. So, yun din ang katumbas. Yun ang timbang mo sa society. For example, nakagawa ka ng krimen. So, basta-basta ka nilang halimbawa papatawan ng punishment. Unlike dun sa mga nobles at saka middle class na mayroon silang sinasabing paglilitis na bibigay sa'yo dahil nga ikaw ay kasabi sa nobles at saka middle class. So, we also have early codes in the Philippine setting. Ito naman, in the Philippines is one of the many countries that came under the influence of the Roman law. So, nag-influence sa atin para gumawa ng batas is ang Roman law, which is history has shown that the Roman Empire reached its greatest extent to most of continental Europe, such as Spain, Portugal, France, and all of Central Europe. So, last time I have already discussed this one, so I am only giving you the part of it for the quiz today. So, kung makikita ninyo, in the Philippines setting, mayroon na tayong mga code kung saan yung mga ninuno natin is gumawa ng kanilang sarili nilang batas para pamunuan ng kanilang mga nasasakupan. So, the early prisons that existed in the Roman is the maritime prison, which is called as fortresses, castles, and town gates. Kung dito niyo makikita, nag-evolve si fortresses, castles, and town gates. So, ang form of confinement for a certain criminal, criminal is ang tinatawag nating fortresses sa castles and town gates. So, dun sila nilalagay. So, the most popular workhouse was the Bridewell Workhouse and created 1557 in London, which was built for the employment and housing of English prisoners. So, meron din tayong Walnut Street Jail, originally constructed as a detention jail in Philadelphia. It was converted into a state prison and became the first American penitentiary. So, the first American penitentiary is Walnut Street Jail, a detention jail in Philadelphia. Okay. In early prisons in the Philippines during the pre-Spanish period, prison system in the Philippines was tribal in nature. So, kung nakagawa ka ng krimen, ng labag sa iyong tribe, so sila mismo yung magkukulong sa'yo. Village chieftains administered it. It was historically traced from the early written laws. So, from generation to generation, nakalagay doon yung forms of punishment na binibigay sa isang kriminal. In 1847, the first Bilibid prison was constructed and became the first became the central place of confinement for Filipino prisoners by virtue of the royal decree of the Spanish crown. So, first believed prison, Muntinlupa. In 1936, the city of Manila exchanges its Muntinlupa property with the Bureau of Prisons, originally intended as the site for boys training school. Manila City Jail, famous as the May Haligi Estate. So let's move on with the emergence of secular law. 4th AD, secular laws were advocated by Christian philosophers who recognizes the need for justice. Some of the proponents of these laws were St. Augustine and St. Thomas Aquinas, as I have said on our previous videos, that mapapansin niyo sa philosophy ninyo ang pangalang St. Augustine at saka St. Thomas Aquinas. The three laws were distinguished as external law, lex externa, natural law, lex naturalis, human law, lex humana. So all these laws are intended for the common good, but the human law only becomes valid if it does not conflict with the other two laws. So ang human law daw ay magiging valid kapag hindi siya nag-conflict sa dalawang batas na ito. So kapag sinabi nating punishment it is the redress that the state takes against an offending member of society that usually involves pain and suffering. So, but nowadays in the Philippines, ang binibigay na parusa is reformation, rehabilitation, para kapag na-serve na ng tao yung kaniyang kaso is hindi na niya ulitin. It is also the penalty imposed on an offender for a crime or wrongdoing. So that is punishment. In ancient forms of punishment, we have death penalty. In the Philippine context, mapapansin nyo during kay yung Itchagaray, siya yung last na napatawan ng lethal injection, death penalty affected by burning. So sa ancient is burning, sinusunog yung tao, beheading, pinupugutan ng ulo, hanging, breaking at the wheels, pillory, and other forms of medieval execution. So ang pinakamahirap, ang pinaka brutal dyan is yung burning at saka beheading. And physical torture affected by maiming, okay, mutilation, some parts of your body, puputulin, maiming, yung halimbawa, yung tao is pinupulupot, so whipping and other inhuman or barbaric forms of inflicting pain. So yan ang physical torture. Number 3, social degradation, kung saan ang isang tao is pinaparada, tapos may nakasulat halimbawa na banner sa kanyang katawan. So yan yung mga punishment nung nakarang araw. So meron din tayong banishment or exile. So ang banishment or exile is ilalagay ka sa malayong lugar kung saan hindi ka makakaalis. Okay, and other similar forms of punishment like transportation and slavery. Okay, tinitransport, nilalagay sa ibang lugar, for example, and slavery, ginagawang ginagawang mga utusan. In early forms of prison discipline, mayroon tayong hard labor, deprivation, monotony, uniformity, mass movement, degradation, corporal punishment. So these are the early forms of prison punishment. In contemporary forms of punishment, we have imprisonment, and it is the putting the offender in prison for the purpose of protecting the public against criminal activities. In order for us to hinder or prevent criminal individual to do a certain crime, for example, parating nagnanakaw, so we are going to put that person into prison. And at the same time, rehabilitating the prisoners by requiring them to undergo institutional treatment programs. So, ang rehabilitation, may mga programs nila dyan kung saan may mga penal institution na while serving their sentences, nasa lugar sila ng facility is nakakapagtrabaho pa rin sila. For example, may mga vocational form of punishment. Halimbawa, pinapagawa sila ng maraming tawag dito, eco bags, yung mga halimbawa. Then let us proceed with parole. A conditional release of prisoners after serving part of his her sentence in prison for the purpose of gradually reintroducing him/her to free life under the guidance and supervision of a parole officer. So ang parole is yung conditional release, papalabasin ka sa kulungan after. Pag sinabi natin sa definition nito, pag lumabas sa board exam, after serving part or after serving half of his sentence. O halimbawa 20 years, so nakapag-serve siya ng 20 years in imprisonment, so lalabas siya. Yung 10 years is doon na niya i-continue sa labas ng prison, sa community, whereas mayroon pa rin nagsusupervise sa kanya na parole officer. Ang parole is subject for restriction, limitation na hindi niya dapat masuong. So we have provision, a disposition whereby a defendant after conviction of the offense, the penalty of which does not exceed 6 years imprisonment. So ang kaibahan ng parole at saka provision is, ang provision is 6 years imprisonment lang. So halimbawa nakaserve siya ng 3 years, so ang 3 years is doon na niya i-serve sa labas, subject for limitation. Hindi siya po pwedeng pumunta sa bar, ill repute na lugar, halimbawa bars, tapos hindi siya pwedeng kumandidato, hindi siya pwedeng lumabas ng lugar kung saan siya nakakulong. Doon pa rin siya sa community, maninirahan. Then except for example na siya ay may karamdaman at ang gamot lang sa kanya sa ibang lugar o sa ibang bansa, so doon na siya pwedeng kumuha ng order mula sa korte na siya ay mag-undergo ng treatment. Okay, fine, an amount given as a compensation for a criminal act. So kung mapapansin niyo sa batas, halimbawa na binigyan ng verdict ang isang tao for halimbawa life imprisonment, tapos mayroon pa din magbabayad ng 1,000,000 danyos sa kanyang biktima. So yun yung tinatawag nating civil punishment or civil punishment na dapat bayaran ng tao kahit na siya ay nakakulong. So yun pa rin ay i-determine ng korte, ng judge, kung anong kayang bayaran ng tao. Halimbawa, ititingnan nila yung mga assets ng tao. Okay, distero, the penalty of banishing a person from the place where he committed the crime, prohibiting him to get near or enter the 25-kilometer perimeter. So ang pinakahalimbawa nito yung pagpatay ng lalaki sa kanyang asawa at sa kakabit nito while nakita niya silang magkapatong. So pag napatay niya ang dalawang yun, is distero lang ang kanyang kaso, whereby hindi siya makakalapit sa lugar kung saan nangyari ang krimen. We have purposes, justification of punishment. Number 1 is retribution.